Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Jennifer Norman with us. She's founder and CEO of the Human Beauty Movement, Humanis Beauty, and Captain Brave Man. She's an award-winning author, podcast host, certified B Corp, and so many other things. So today we're gonna talk about wellness, mindfulness, disability, and inclusivity. This podcast is brought to you by podfire.com if you want to start or scale your podcast. Jen, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Thank you so much, Charles, for the invitation to be here. It's so wonderful to join you and to be here to talk to your audience. I'm usually talking to mine, so it's nice to be able to spread the love. Again, my name is Jennifer Norman. I'm based out of Los Angeles, and I do have a couple of companies and a skincare brand. And truly, what I have learned over the course of my career is that beauty is an inside job. I had for many decades actually been marketing beauty from the outside and did a really good job at it, frankly, but then really decided to make a shift based upon my own personal experience to really focus on a more purpose-driven way of being. And so that impacted my professional life as well.
And nowadays, how do you split your time in between each of these businesses of yours?
Well, it's one of those things where I happen to be a multi-passionate human being. I think that there are a lot of people these days that can relate and like to have a lot of balls juggling in the air. And I tend to thrive when I have that going on. So I spend most of my time working on the human beauty movement, where I am doing workshops that are wellness-based, mental health-based, and sit at the intersection of diversity and well-being. And then I would say that a portion of my time, I consider it more of my side hustle, is Super Captain Brave Man, writing children's books about disability.
Interesting. So, as a founder, like what led you from the corporate world to starting your own business?
I think a lot of people might have a similar story where they were in corporate for many, many years, and then a life experience pretty much shifted the way that they had to go about their lives. And so they had to design their lives accordingly. And in my situation, I had a son who, at the age of 2 years old, almost passed away, but he didn't. He held on. And so from there, he was left living with chronic illness and disability. And it becomes increasingly hard as a single mom to have a son with so many needs, who is living on a ventilator, who cannot breathe on his own, who cannot eat by his own, who can't walk or cannot move, to actually have a corporate job and be able to focus at work and do the things that you need to do when your son needs to be rushed to the ER or is, really in a critical state. A lot of people come across not necessarily that particular experience, but they have parents that all of a sudden fall ill, or they have other family members or other crises that are happening in their lives where all of a sudden their whole world shifts. It's a bit traumatic, but you are faced with a situation of trying to understand what it means, creating meaning out of it, and then what to do about it. Well, a lot of people can fall into a real bad situation where, they kind of victimize themselves and really are desperately trying to find answers. And that was me for a long time, frankly, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. But luckily, I was able to gain the inspiration that I needed in order to really see the positive side of things and to realize that this was an opportunity for me to create a new life, a new way forward for myself, which was one that was not necessarily focused on the everyday grind of corporate. Like, I know you've got wonderful podcast guests that are very really good at that. I had to do something different, and that was okay. And I wanted to come onto your podcast, and I'm really pleased that you invited me on your podcast to talk about this other kind of way, which is not necessarily so head minded. It's not necessarily leading from the head and leading from that place of organizational structure and whatnot. It's really led from the heart. It's led from something that is a little bit different, and it's really a more divine feminine way of going forward.
Wow. So, how did you get over it with the situation with your son? Is it adaptation? Is it just getting used to this new life of yours, or did you had to go through various thought process, introversion, or even spiritual ceremonies to understand now that things are different?
The answer is yes. I went through all of that. And at first, it was very dark. It was very difficult. It was almost like those initial stages of grief that a lot of people go through, and a sense of loss, really an existential crisis of my identity as I knew it was disappearing before my eyes. And then it's a coming to terms with it. It's, doing a lot of that soul searching and that inner work to find out, okay, with my life as it is now, what can I do? What are the steps that I can take to move forward? I did, do a lot of spiritual journeying. I did do the plant medicine. Yes, yes, and yes. And so it was really like a whole combination of things that really culminated into me being okay with my new life, me being grateful for the gift of the lessons that it was able to teach me, and also to see that it builds resilience, it builds strength in a different way. I was okay with before with the number crunching and the marketing and the business building and all of that, but here I was really doing something where I said, you know what, if I were to lead from a heart-centered place and I were to design my life differently, I would live a life of compassion. I would show people how to live compassionately. I would understand that, a person like me who is, a minority in the United States of America with a disabled son who is half Korean, a quarter Black, a quarter Puerto Rican, and, and chronically ill, can live a beautiful life. There's no reason why we can't, if we really empower ourselves to think positively and to vibrate intentionally, we can actually thrive. We can attract everything that we need to ourselves and actually find really beautiful people to surround ourselves with that give us the support that we need in order to even do really well in business.
That's fascinating. So, what does your spiritual regimen look like on a day to day?
Mm-hmm. It always starts with gratitude. It starts up with waking up every single day with a smile and being able to say, thank you. Thank you for me waking up. Thank you for this roof over my head. Thank you for the beautiful people in my life. Thank you for this opportunity to serve. What more can I do? And how do I want this day to go? How do I want it to feel? How do I want to impact other people's lives in such a way that everybody is just, overjoyed with the fact that we are in each other's lives? And then next, I always go and visit my son. I take care of him in the morning before his caretakers come, his nurses come, and help give me respite. And then I really go into the more business aspects of my day, where with all of that good intention, I dive in and I say, okay, what opportunities am I going to tackle today in terms of being able to do things that I absolutely love and that really bring me joy?
And do you feel you're at peace today, or do storms come every now and then?
Yeah, I mean, at being human, it's always going to be one of those ebbs and flows of situations, and there will always be, new things and new challenges, and we wouldn't grow if we didn't continuously have challenges. I am definitely, my baseline is peace. My baseline is gratitude. My baseline is happiness. And so I'm pleased to say that, even with a lot of the situations that come up in people's lives, I always say my tagline is it can make you better or it can make you bitter, and you can choose either way. Let's choose to be better. And so if we can face every obstacle, every frustrating moment, I have many of them especially when it comes to websites, frankly, lately. I've been every time I go on and try to talk with my developers, there always seems to be something that's going to be a little bit frustrating. I'm sure a lot of people can relate. But yeah, if you can just say, okay, I can lash out at this situation, or I can have power in this pause, and I can have this moment to just breathe and say, you know what, let me see if I can rephrase this. Maybe I can say something in a kinder, more succinct and clarified way rather than venting, as it were.
Right. So, starting with the human beauty movement, you've been at it for 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're the company behind Soul Care Sessions. So, it's corporate wellness programs. Tell us a bit more about this company. What do you sell
Mhm.
to whom at what price?
Yeah, it's interesting to use the word soul and company, corporate well, like those sorts of things together. And I thought that it was about, high time that we were able to bring a bit of the, spiritual aspects into business because we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. And frankly, every company is built out of humans. And so I felt that, very similarly to how we talk about the DNA of a brand or the DNA of a company and the values and associations with that. I felt like a lot of times, especially these days when companies are becoming more virtual, becoming more scattered in terms of their workforce, a lot of companies start thinking like, oh man, I feel like we've lost a bit of our corporate culture. And what I say is, I think you kind of need your soul back. I think you kind of need to figure out what the soul and the essence is of your company and really help your employees to feel that way as well, to feel that they have value and some alignment towards your purpose and can feel connection with the soul of the company and with each other, frankly. And so the soul care sessions that I put on are really just that. It's really to allow people to connect on a more meaningful level, rather than putting PowerPoint slides up in front of them. It's really like, how are we doing? How are we feeling? A time to laugh, a time to express, a time to feel all the feels, and then go into some opportunities to learn some new wellness skills and build them into a ritual or a practice for yourself. So, breath work, sound baths, meditation, journaling, things like that are, just very interesting for people to start to incorporate and then, helps them to really manage through the day in a better way.
Very cool. So how do you get in touch with these potential clients? And yeah, what's the cost of such a retreat or yeah, the program slash workshop with your company?
Yeah, I invite people to visit the website so that they can learn about it. I certainly am part of the B Corporation movement. And so many of my clients are B corporations that are really interested in caring more deeply for their employees. And so from there and through word of mouth and through podcasts like this, I'm able to reach new companies, new organizations. And in terms of doing the kinds of work that we do, they range from everything from, online virtual sessions where we can connect to actually doing things on site or doing retreats. And it really does vary depending, the pricing does vary depending on what the actual event is. Program is and how many people are going to be involved. So I encourage everybody to come and send an email so that we can put together a custom program for you.
And what's the meaning of inclusivity for you?
Ooh, that is a nice question. Thank you for asking. Inclusivity means that everybody has a seat at the table. Inclusivity means that no matter what your race, your gender, your background, your sexual identity, your beliefs, that everybody is respected. It really starts from a place of respect. How about you? What is yours?
Hmm. It's giving the shot, I guess, to underdogs. That would be my definition. That motivates me at least or generates serotonin. For
Mhm.
example, me when I started in business, I don't think I had much folks to help me. I did have a mentor, but yeah, if people would just give out better information and good information for the benefit of all, because I feel that most of information nowadays is marketing materials instead of information that can really help out people. I think that the world would be a better place as a result, which is why I have this crusade to convert as many people into entrepreneurs nowadays. I'm curious. I'm looking at your own podcast. When did you start it? What was the goal behind it? And do you feel it's reaching your objectives?
Yeah, thank you for asking. The Human Beauty Movement podcast originally started as a podcast called Role Models. And so for about a season and a half, it was called Role Models, where I thought it would be wonderful to have these extraordinary conversations with people that were beating the odds, and that did represent a diverse range of humanity. And so I had wonderful individuals like Gabe Adams come on, and Logan Alcaceba, somebody who is trans, somebody who, is limbless, somebody who has alopecia, somebody who is suffering with vitiligo, different people to come on and tell their stories and really help to provide inspiration. Then I switched over because I recognized that, we are all role models, or we all can be role models. And I really wanted to ensure that the branding for the human beauty movement was shining through. And so I rebranded and named it the Human Beauty Movement, where it does sit at the intersection of diversity and well-being. And I do talk with people from all walks of life, all corners of the globe, about how they are helping to express hope, healing, happiness, and humanity.
What have been some of your best guests so far? What have you learned from them and their story?
Yeah, yeah. I don't like to say best because I think they're all the best. However, some of them that really did strike a chord. There was a gentleman named Zach Hamilton who came on, and he had a lifelong battle with self-esteem issues, which resulted in OCD. And a lot of unfortunate situations that happened in his childhood just really impacted him into adulthood. And he really did the work to convert his life around. And so that was one of my top listened to podcasts, which I appreciate him for being so vulnerable and telling his story.
And what would be some of your best solutions to give everyone a shot in this society? What would be some, yeah, plans of yours or ideas or ventures of yours that you feel would have a great impact on society?
Yeah, my first thought is based upon my own experience, and that is don't get in your own way. Don't let self-limiting beliefs get in your way of your own success. Don't say, because I'm Asian, I can't, people think of me like this, or because I'm Black, people think of me like this. Do the work in order to be able to convince yourself that you are worthy, because you are. You are worthy, you are capable, you can be confident, you can do the job as good, if not better, than anybody else on this planet. And so if we start to continue to change those scripts and discontinue the old scripts that we've told ourselves that had served to keep us down, then we can start building a new life for us. That's part of it. Of course, there's systemic issues and all sorts of things that we can change in our environment and in business and in culture and whatnot to help to extend inclusivity. But I always encourage people to do their inner work and their inner healing first.
And where do these beliefs come from? It seems that, yeah, society doesn't, well, I mean, there is racism in this society, but like
Mhm.
because I'm Asian, I can't succeed. That seems very foreign to me. Like how many people think like that?
You would be surprised. I know that you're not in the United States of America. You're in Mexico, if I'm correct, correct? And so it really depends on where you are. It really depends on where you are. But if we can think about some of the issues that had happened during COVID, where a lot of Asian people were really biased against. There was a lot of racial bias,
Right.
and a lot of that still continues today, as well as there is an extreme bias against China for various reasons. And so that tends to be conflated with people's opinions of Chinese or Asian people in general. And so whether or not it has to do, and frankly, Asians are considered like the model minority. So perhaps that's not an example that is as poignant, but for my fellow people of black skin, brown skin, yellow skin, red skin, a lot of times there is intergenerational healing that we have an opportunity for. And so that healing can be both internal as well as certain amends and conditions that can be made externally in order to provide seats at the table.
Right. You're right with the COVID stuff against China for sure. I think yeah, lots of people shown has shown racism in there. It's just that me, my mindset is mostly Silicon Valley, and in Silicon Valley, like Indians or Asian folks, they're pretty much celebrated. They're like top CEOs. They're
Yep.
have the tiger parents, and
Yep.
they're really disciplined at school. They excel in pretty much everything that they do. Me, my worry when it comes to this and tiger parents is like the mental health side of things. Like,
Hmm.
are they robots, or do they actually, have feelings and talk about these feelings and flow? I mean, if they're happy with that, for sure. But no, you're right. Like, I'm not in the US for sure, but I would think that, yeah. And I think in terms of coast, when I think in the US, I don't think in terms of central US, which is probably, yeah, a different story there. Now, for this year, what are your top goals? Like, what would be your top three that if you would check, you would be a satisfied woman at the end of 2024?
It's interesting because, of course, I do have financial goals, which, of course, if I check those boxes, I will be extremely gleeful. But also, jobs well done for the programs that I do have in place now. I am so, so excited about them and I want to give them my all. And I would love nothing more than to have wonderful reviews at the end of them. And of course, on, my podcast and, certain socials and subscriptions, I have goals associated with increasing my numbers of subscribers and whatnot. And I know that that's your wheelhouse. And so certainly, hitting metrics is always an indication of certain amounts of success. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I can say, even if I were to say, you know what, I did my best. I lived the life that I wanted to, and I feel that my self-worth is intact regardless of those goals and being able to achieve them or not. Of course, I want to, and that's to be celebrated. But I think the human spirit of being better today than yesterday should be celebrated more.
Love that, and love everything you're about, like the super Mr. Captain. Yeah, super Captain Brave Man. That's so cool. Where can people find out more about you and your businesses, Jen?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I can be found at thehumanbeautymovement.com, and on social, it's the Human Beauty Movement pretty much everywhere. Humanist Beauty is the product line, humanistbeauty.com. Feel free to buy something. And supercaptainbraveman.com is where you can find the children's books, which help to destigmatize disability for young kids.